There, okay. I'd like to call this regular school board meeting, and it is March 7th, 2022, at 5:15 PM in the Thompson Room in the middle school. I'd like to also recognize all those in the audience. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, and the flag is over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jason, would you be willing to read the school board norms?
The board developed norms are to share and respect varied opinions and speak with united voice once a decision has been reached, to prudently prioritize resources in a student-centric manner that aligns with the district's strategic plan, to exhibit a mindset of continuous improvement through adequate preparation for meetings, and a commitment to board education, and to commit to assessing board effectiveness to ensure high-quality governance for the staff, students, and community of Jamestown.
Thank you, Jason. Under C, we have no public communication. Under D, does anyone on the board have a conflict of interest to declare? No conflicts of interest declared. Moving on to our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Roger. Second by Aaron. Any discussion? Anyone would like removed? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Moving on to our regular meeting. Nothing under recognition or correspondence. If the board is okay with us moving the educational competency Marzano teacher and leadership evaluation system with Mr. Eddie Delzer and Mr. Jeff Meisner up above the superintendent's report. And in the future, we may do our council reports and these education things. We might move them up in the agenda if the board is okay with that. That way we want to be respectful of people's time. So, perfect. Please come forward.
Yeah, the other one. Press power.
Domain one is what I see when I go into a classroom, so classroom strategies and behaviors. And then domains 2 through 4 are a little more challenging to see. Just walking into classroom, planning and preparing, reflecting on teaching, and then collegiality and professionalism. So together, the 4 domains, they contain up to 60 elements that define knowledge base for teaching and the framework of the systematic development. So I took screenshots of what it would look like if I were to go into a classroom. So there's 6 design or domain questions, or 2 domain questions relating to involving routine and events. So oftentimes at the beginning of the year, I'll go in and just look for classroom routines, the I can statements, so nothing too formal, just as they're just getting the year started. So I'll go in and look for a clear traffic pattern in the classroom, the I can statements, acknowledging that students are participating. I can see that there's clear mutual respect between the teacher and the student, things like that. Later on in the year, I'll go in again. I'll still look for those same things, but addressing the content will be becoming more of a focus. So 3 design questions there are all organized differently. So the first set, 6 through 13, is helping students interact with new knowledge. Domain question number 3 is helping students practice and design new knowledge, and then the last one is helping students generate and test hypotheses. And then the last one is what teachers just kind of do on a daily, not really recognizing it though, but it's really important of what they do on the spot. So engaging the students is a big one. So what does the teacher do when the students aren't engaged? Managing response rates, using physical movement, things like that. So a big thing that our teachers have gone through with professional development, been like turn and talk. So more that the students are interacting with each other than the teacher just talking all the time. So these are the things that I see when I go into the classroom, or what an administrator would see. So this is what it would look like. So when we go into a classroom as administrator, we go in and you receive feedback. So I'll click on one of those design questions and something like this screen would pop up. So oftentimes a younger teacher might see that there's not a lot of check marks on these, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just what you see. So we're in there for a very brief amount of time. It's maybe 10 to 15 minutes. So it's what you see when you're in there. It's not, oh, they don't have a check mark in this area, so they need to work on it. It's just something that that's evidence of what has been seen. So on the left-hand side is what the teacher does. On the right-hand side is what I can see the student doing. If we ever have questions, or sometimes in like the second bullet there, it says students can explain. I'll interact with kids and they can tell me what they're learning about. I'll ask them what their I can statement is. I'll ask them what the lesson is about, what they're supposed to be learning, and then we'll have a back and forth. And then along at the bottom, I don't oftentimes use not applicable, just because if it's something that I see, I'm gonna mark it. So normally when I go into a classroom and an informal observations 10 to 15 minutes, I'll pick 3 areas that I've seen things that are being done. If I'm looking for regular things like I can statements that should be up all the time every day, I might use something like that, not using, just because I want to make the teacher aware that I didn't see those today. It doesn't mean that they're not there, but sometimes they might not review them and things like that. If you ever have, like, if an administrator ever has a question about what's the difference between beginning, developing, applying, innovating, I kind of took a screenshot of what the applying definition is, so you can look to see on any given design question what would move a teacher from applying to innovating, or what's the difference between developing and applying. So this is what the administrator side looks like. So this is actually one of Mr. Meisner's that he gave me permission to use this. So he'll talk a little bit about what it looks like on his end.
Okay, like Mr. Delzer said, this is just an example of some feedback that I received on Domain 1, which is Classroom Strategies and Behaviors, on a walkthrough. And again, there's the 2 columns that Mr. Delzer talked about, the example of teacher evidence and the example of student evidence, which I think there's 13 total strategies or evidence on this page, with 7 checked. And they're fairly specific. And I guess the thing that I normally take away from this, or that I try and grow from, is the fact that, you know, he will make comments on the bottom. And one thing that he does have on there, Mr. Delzer obviously has had a little bit more experience in the West Fargo schools. This was a guided reading lesson, and that being new to our district and something that they did at West Fargo, he has a little bit more insight. And one thing that he gave me to try out as an idea is to try 3 before me on the bottom in his comments, which is something that I've actually implemented into my classroom. My kids understand it, and it's helped my lessons be more effective as far as intrusion and kids being a little bit more independent. So that's kind of, like I said, that's kind of what it looks like on my side as far as a walkthrough.
And like you mentioned, the big thing that I mean, you can check all the boxes you want, but eventually you have things in your head that you could relay to the teacher that you think would go better. So I always write something like, I wonder, even if they're at like innovating, like all the students were actively engaged, you still want to give something to teacher to think about, to walk away with, because we can always be more efficient if nothing else. So I'll always give something that I thought went really well and something that I have a wondering about. So domains 2, 3, and 4, like I said, I said earlier, it's really hard to see just walking into a classroom. You can assume these things are happening. So the planning, preparing, reflecting on teaching and collegiality and professionalism. In the past, in mid-February, I used to send out like a worksheet, which we don't want kids to be engaged with, right? And they'd fill it out, and then I'd schedule a meeting with them, and I'd just make notes on it, and they'd have questions on domain 2, what do you do to plan, what kind of, do you use all the technology that's available to you, and things like that. And then mid-March, I'd fill out the online application, and then we'd meet again. So current practice, I'll have Mr. Meisner kind of talk about what happens or what's been happening.
As far as
Throw them under the bus. All right. So they have their own goals. So they fill out their own goal. I meet with them. I try to meet with them every month. Obviously, there's been a lot of things that have prevented that. So it might be every other month. We discuss their goals, their learning initiatives, and then I fill out an observation, judging by our conversation. So it's not something they fill out anymore. It's something that we have a discussion about, something that they want to improve on, and then I take that from there. So this is something Mr. Meisner would see at his end then.
So basically, like Mr. Delzer said, we picked a goal, and that goal for me was to get more comfortable with guided reading and daily 5 in my classroom, and to make it a more consistent component of my reading approach. And so basically, like Mr. Delzer said, we meet monthly, we discuss my steps towards that goal, and if I have any questions about it. And again, it's something that it being new to the school, need to get more comfortable with. So just establishing the goal and meeting with him, because he does have more experience with the guided reading than I do, has helped me become a lot more comfortable towards this goal. And this is our basically our feedback after that discussion.
So it's similar to domain 1, what you would see in the teacher end, but the conversations I let a teacher lead. I ask how things are going, what they need. So Mr. Meisner didn't understand, but how to incorporate a schedule so it worked in his classroom. So we came up with a schedule together. I facilitated that schedule so it met our district criteria of what our lower tier students needed more meeting times during the week, so we got that all figured out. So I'll help teachers create and generate things that they need from these discussions then. So the evaluation cycle, every 3 years a teacher will go through a cycle, the self, the peer, the formal. So we talked about what the informal looks like just on a 15-minute walk-in, but every 3 years, or a new teacher that is been in the district for 3 years will get 2 formals in a year. So a formal observation will look something similar to what I posted up there. But I'll give them, it's a pre-observation worksheet that's generated through Marzano. It'll walk me through what they're going to teach. So from that, I'll just write on there the design questions that I would expect to see. We'll have a pre-conference, and I'll just go through it, and I'll say I expect to see that you're chunking things into new content. So you're using chunking. Is that something that I'm actually going to see? So it's very detailed at that point, and I'm going to make sure that that's an emphasis on their lesson. So it's more like when a teacher goes through the teacher education program, it's a lesson plan actually. So that's the formal observation process. The self is something that Mr. Meisner is going through this year, so something where they fill out a goal, a SMART goal, what they want to accomplish. And then a peer is where they actually get to go on to the admin side and go to a teacher in their district. It doesn't have to be at their school, and they get to rate another teacher, and it's not shared with the principal then. So they get to go in and rate their elements and leave feedback for them. So similar to teachers, administrators are also being evaluated on the Marzano framework. It's kind of hard to see, but there's 5 domains: data-driven focus and student achievement, continuous improvement of instruction, a guaranteed and viable curriculum, cooperation and collaboration, and school climate. So those pieces are all done together by Mr. Leck or Dr.-elect, he'll go through our schools and he'll observe what we're doing. He'll include our times that we meet at monthly collaboration times. So one of our big goals this for the last couple of years through the wellness committee or things through the EAP and just making sure that's available to everybody. So things like that come up in our evaluations, how we're working with district initiatives and things like that. So he'll come to the schools and have conversations. We have conversations on a regular basis always, and it's very helpful that administrators also get feedback, one, but he's also always available to ask questions too. And I think that's the biggest part of leadership, that it's feedback, it's something that we can use always and continues. So, are there any questions?
I'm talking about the 360s too.
Oh, yes, the 360s. So this was something new for me this year. I think it was used in the past. So every 3 years, a survey gets sent to the staff. There are questions, I believe, the rating, I'm not familiar with the rating scale, but you shared the results with me. But so strength, weakness type activity, and then there was a question at the end, kind of open response question. We went through the results. A lot of good feedback is given on there, things you don't think about, that you just do on a daily basis that are perceived in different ways. So we go through those results. It's all that put together is a leadership evaluation. I don't get, I don't want to say ding, but harsh comments aren't left on my eval. It's just conversation points, just like if I were to walk into a classroom and do an eval or observation, the things I didn't see, just things to think about, and so you can continually grow of what other perspectives are and how you're doing your job. Questions?
Any other questions?
Two questions I have is what are teachers' thoughts about this as an evaluation system? Is this one that they feel particularly helpful? Have we ever surveyed them to see if this is something they feel has improved their teaching and is a good model for them to use? And second, is this a model, how prevalent is it being used in the state of North Dakota? Is this kind of the model that the state of North Dakota and DPI has recommended that schools use? So those are two questions I have.
I can answer part of that. So North Dakota Central Code requires a research-based evaluation framework to be used. Smaller schools, if you look across the state, some of our more rural schools use a different type of evaluation system that we don't use. The larger schools are really between Danielson and Marzano, and that's pretty consistent. And I would say it's probably more heavily weighted towards Marzano than Danielson, and those schools that are Danielson driven are making that shift to Marzano over time. To ask the question, to answer your question about survey, we haven't done a survey directly. We did have a task force that was formed, when we began the process, and that was very much teacher driven to select the research-based framework that we would use. All decisions were related to that. And I can't speak about how any individual teacher feels about, like I said, we haven't done a survey. I can say, and I made this comment at our administrative team meeting recently, I thought I was a good classroom teacher. I really did. I thought I was a really good classroom teacher when I was teaching. And I am nowhere near the kind of teacher that our teachers are. And it isn't, I might look old, but it hasn't been that long ago that I was a classroom teacher. And our teachers now have such a more well-rounded professional base to work from than we ever did. My evaluation when I was teaching happened, March 15th was the deadline, and it typically happened on March 13th. And I would get a very quick evaluation that said, I'm doing great, and I got no feedback really to make me better. And I was wanted that. I was wanted a little bit more feedback to help me be a better teacher. And that's really what our teachers want. They want some kind of feedback that recognizes all of the good work that they do and gives them tools and guidance to improve and be even better. And I think research-based frameworks like Marzano really do that, and it's something I wish I had. I wish I had a system like this when I was teaching. It would have made me such a better teacher.
And is this our 5th year? Or 6th?
Eighth?
8th? Time flies when we're having fun.
Yeah. And that task force has been used, and we haven't shifted a lot, probably for the last 5 years. But that was the team that made decisions. It wasn't administrator driven. It was administrator facilitated. And so a collection of teachers made decisions. And when we wanted to change, or we had questions about how it could work, like the formals, when Mr. Delser was talking about we used to do a formal for everybody, and it was very onerous for teachers, and it was very onerous for administrators. And so we did this shift to a 3-year rotation. Those are the types of things that group decided to do. But no, we haven't given a direct survey to say, do you like or dislike?
Okay, thank you. A few questions. The unfortunate reality of evaluations or reviews, not just in education, I remember those when I was teaching, is we often get the feel that we're just checking the boxes because it's something we have to do. So like Dr. Leck was saying, the key to effective reviews and evaluations is that feedback. So this appears to me to be a great framework, and all framework, looks great. So some questions about how we're delivering it. We put a lot of emphasis in this district also on professional development. Is there a direct link between our professional development and this framework, or are we working more towards that? Or when we get to that level, is it somewhat personal professional development for the teacher? Did that make sense?
I'm going to answer this one too, if that's okay, unless you have something to add. Marzano, in the eye observation report, or the eye observation system, the software that we use, one of the things that we do every year is we run a report that outlines every element that was scored, how many times it was scored, what it was scored at. So it really drives a lot of, and then we provide that at a building level. So Mr. Delser will get a report that says you had this many observations that scored this many elements. These were the average elements, so, and I ask them each year to look at, what elements did you rate? You rated these high, you rated this one a lot, and you hardly rated this one. Why is that? And it's an opportunity for self-reflection. But then that also does help us to, at a district level, to recognize across the district and at different building levels, where are our gaps at? If we aren't rating engagement strategies, for example, very highly, then we know that there's probably a gap there, and as a district, we need to support engagement strategies better. On the flip side of that, and I'll use engagement strategies again because we've invested a lot of professional development resource in engagement strategies like IAL strategies, and we've seen a direct correlation there to some of our highest scores are related to engagement. Our teachers have a very strong knowledge about engagement strategies, and we see that represented in those scores as well. So a little bit of both there.
No, that's good. That's good that that's happening because that's really the basis of evaluations. So next question, this is research-based, which we like. Does this framework ever change, or the criteria within it ever change? We've been doing it 8 years now. Has that evolved with the educational times?
Yeah, if it's okay, I'll answer that one too. So it has changed. We have adopted the 2015 framework, and it was updated in 2017. I think that's right. We opted to stay with 2015 because we had just made a shift to the framework, and we didn't want to again make a new change after we went in a 3-year adoption cycle for all of these elements. Because if you just throw all these elements at everybody, 60 elements, design questions, all these design questions, all these elements, our administrators wouldn't have known what to do right away. It would have been a lot of where do I even start? And so we phased those in over time. And right when we got to our third year, which is our final year of phasing, they changed the framework. So we opted to stay with the older framework. There's not significant change to it, but we opted to stay just because that was what our people were comfortable with and what they knew. But yes, it's revised over time.
3 years ago when we were given the design questions with all the elements, and Mr. Haglund actually highlighted the ones that carried the most weight in the classroom. So those were our point of emphasis moving forward. I'm guessing that had a correlation with it because those were the ones that had the higher percentage of impact.
One more question, I promise. That's it. So, it seems like this is a great overall process in that there's a lot of feedback given, and then we kind of reach consensus on how we're doing and agree on it, as opposed to 1 out of 4 rating and you're either effective or not, okay? So I like that part of this. My question is, if we would ever run into the situation where a staff member would disagree with their rating, is there recourse for them to have it looked at again, or haven't we been there yet? I just remember that as part of the formal evaluations, you could always check the box that you want to be reviewed by another administrator. So I'm just wondering if that is even a part of this, or we're way past that in our education process.
Something that I'm aware of. So each domain is weighted a certain percentage. So I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think domain 1 carries up 50%, and then domains 2 through 4 are weighted with a different percentage. So what administrators see in the classroom is weighted differently. I haven't ever had the.
So anybody that has something placed in their file, like an evaluation, is placed in a teacher's file. Anytime something is placed in a professional file, a staff member would always have an opportunity to respond to that. If a staff member received observations, which leads, of course, to an evaluation, and disagrees with something in that, they can always write a response, and that's connected to that evaluation too.
Yeah, my question is just kind of related to the frequency and the duration of the observations. You mentioned there's both formal and informal, roughly 15 minutes for the informal. Now, just on the face of it there with, 60 different observation elements in front of you, and you got 15 minutes to go, it's an ominous thing. So did the consultancy or research group that developed this Marzano, did they have a recommendation for that frequency and duration of observations? And then if so, how well are we aligned to what they had recommended?
So they do have standards in just like has been referenced before, observations are the key. Volume and quality of observations are the key. So we trained our administrators initially on watching videos. They would watch a video and we would all score and rate those together and then have conversations. And Mr. Haglund would tell us, well, here's what Marzano would actually tell you. This is developing for these reasons. And so some of that was just the training and ensuring that whether it's Mr. Delzer walking into a classroom or Mr. Hardy walking into a classroom, that element's going to be viewed the same. But in terms of observations volume, our gold standard as a district is we would like to have an hour every day devoted to observations. That's not reality, just because there's lots of management requirements that occur during a day, and it depends at the level that you're at. In an elementary building, that's a lot harder. You don't have an assistant principal there to support what's happening in the office. But then as you go into the middle school and the high school, there's multiple administrators, but also more teachers. So you're managing that as well. But that's kind of our gold standard is, we hope that it occurs 5 hours every week devoted to observations. Is that reality? No, but that's what we shoot for. And I think if you can get to that level, you're getting individuals with a lot of regular feedback, and we're seeing a lot of elements scored, and then when you throw all of that together, you're getting a real good sense of what you're doing at a teacher level, at a building level, as a district level.
I'll try my mic now. Okay, yep, it should be working. Melissa, go ahead.
I was just curious on the peer part of that. Is that done within the same building, or is that done across the district? And who assigns who's doing whose
So they can-
evaluation?
So like at Louis L'Amour, we don't have 2 kindergarten or 2 fifth grade teachers, so they can just tell me who they want to observe, and then Mr. Hagelin actually opens it up so that they're able to select each other to give feedback to, and again, that's locked for the administrator side, so everything, the comments, the ratings are stayed there. So when Mr. Meisner gets to that point, he'll say, I want to go, if he wants to go see Mr. Eusted at Washington, I'll cover for him, or however that works best. So, yep. So it doesn't need to be at the school since.
Any other questions? Okay. Well,
I think the biggest aspect of this is it makes a well-rounded educator. I mean, you can be a good classroom teacher, and then if we fail to plan and prepare, that's not something we want. So I think all 4 domains really make a good educator. The professionalism and collegiality is, and I think Jamestown's very fortunate to have a lot of good educators because the system focuses such on a well-rounded educator.
I know the question was asked about how teachers perceive this. Having been around for a while, the evaluations, when I first started teaching, almost at times felt punitive a little bit. I mean, it was a really stressful thing, like Dr. Leckett said, your evaluation is done by this time, and you kind of, we're sweating it out. This seems, it seems you get a lot more from it. It's a much more positive interaction. Like I said, I lead with something that I can try with every evaluation, and I don't view it as you need to change this, you need to change this. It's, well, what would this look like, or if you did this, like I said, in the example that Mr. Delzer gave me is something that, I've been in education a lot longer than he has, but it was a very simple approach that he gave me that, it was support, and I like the evaluation much more than what I was used to, so.
Thank you, Mr. Delzer, Mr. Meisner, a lot of great board education and board discussions, so thank you very much. Under board education, we also have educational competency, United States Senate page, Will Nelson. Oh, yeah, I got it. Okay.
I'd like to thank Dr. Leck for inviting me to speak tonight. Obviously, I'm Will Nelson. I'm a junior up at the high school, and I'm here to speak to you about my experience as a U.S. Senate page last semester. Just to give you a little history about the PAGE program, because it's not widely known about. It was founded in 1828, meaning it's nearly 60 years older than our state of North Dakota. And I was very fortunate to be a part of a class that's rather historic, because up until the pandemic, there had never not been a class of pages in the Senate. And that was the first time they didn't have pages. And last fall was the first time they had pages after that short break. And many of the senators and many of the staff were very happy that pages were back in the Capitol. So I hope my overview of the program is educational today. So we'll slide down there. All right, so the goal of the program is to try to cater for it to be an educational experience as well as an experience in the Senate. So it's one academic semester. My time there was from September 13th to January 28th, and they do have a marking period system, which is very similar to our quarter system, and both of the marking periods account for part of your grade as well as your semester exam, and then we received a transcript that gave just semester grades for me for the aspect of the academics. There are 30 students from across the United States selected for each semester. We had 23 pages from 23 different states represented. We had 4 New Yorkers and 2 Kentuckians and 2 New Hampshireites. It just depends on which senators get to appoint pages. And I was fortunate to be appointed by Senator Hogan. There's a picture of our page class from the end of January, just to provide a little perspective on how big it is, and it's rather diverse. I was fortunate enough to be sponsored by Senator Hope, and after going through an application process, I began that last March. It starts out with having to submit a letter of recommendation, your transcript, and then having to do an interview. And then if you make it even further, you get to submit a resume. And by June, I'd found out that he would nominate me to the program. Because he's not very senior in leadership or anything like that, I was put on a wait list, and I was fortunate enough to be selected from the wait list to get into the program. There's a picture of Senator Hoban and I right here. He was a very good sponsoring senator. He always made a point to talk to me every day and had a few jokes. So I really did appreciate my time as a page with him. The part of the program that's a little more interesting is everyone lives in this building called the Webster Residential Hall. That's where everything kind of occurs. You live there. As you can see, I had 3 roommates. The school is in the basement of the residence, and then you also have the office for the program itself within that building. So all of the PAGE program kind of occurs in one building. It's about 2 blocks from the Capitol, and after you're done with school in the morning, that's when you head over to the Capitol and you perform your daily duties. So here's just a little picture of Webster Hall. It was converted in 1996 for this purpose. It used to actually be a funeral home, so there are a few jokes about that, about ghosts when you're sleeping. I chose not to believe them, but and then there's a picture of my roommates. They try to select roommates to cater to a diversity of geography and political party, appointing political party. So 2 of my roommates, including myself, were Republican pages, and then 2 were Democratic pages. And there was one from Illinois, one from Texas, and one from New Hampshire. So they really tried to give us a broad swath of variety in our rooms and try to expose us to new perspectives. And then I kind of wanted to give you an overview of a day in the life of a page, because it's a really long day, and when you kind of get the scope of how long the day is, you can kind of understand what it's like. So you get up at 5, and you have to be ready and downstairs by 6 for school, which starts at 6:15 in the morning. And that'll go until 9:45 a.m. or an hour and 15 minutes before the Senate convenes. So if the Senate's coming in early, school will be shortened. You only have 4 classes, 4 core classes, and they're called honors classes, but they're all taught with an AP curriculum. They can't be classified as AP educators because they only teach students for half a school year, 1 semester. So they can't get accreditation for that reason. But for all intents and purposes, the AP government class I took there is almost exactly the same as ours. And you get a little more experience up first, obviously, with the AP government. And there's just some pictures from the school itself. We don't have cell phones during the time we're there, or personal computers that we use at school. So you have a lot of paper. I had 4 giant binders full of paper for each class. So there's just a few pictures from the school, which was in the basement of Webster Hall. And once we wrapped up school, usually early in the morning, we would head over to the Capitol building, where we would work in the Senate chamber, usually from about 10 a.m. to when they would adjourn, which could be any time. It could be 1 in the afternoon, or one time it could be 4 in the morning. You work all throughout the day, and you perform a variety of duties. You prepare senators to speak on the floor, so you get an easel, and you get water, and you get their speech, and you perform duties like those. And then you also deliver documents and packages throughout the Capitol complex, whether it's to senators' offices or to committees or other things such as that. That's kind of the biggest variation in your day, because your entire time as a Senate page is catered for you to work in the Senate. So school may be shortened and you may not go to bed until 5 a.m., but it's a really good experience. It takes a while to get used to the schedule. And there's just a little picture from C-SPAN to kind of provide you with a visual of where we sit. That's called the rostrum. It's right next to the presiding officer's chair. And whenever a senator needs something, they would just point to have you come over, and you get them what they need. And when they're preparing to speak, you set them up. That's Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. She's actually talking about being from North Dakota and how cold it is, and how us people from the Arctic, as she called it, we're the only ones who really have some some grit. And then there's just a picture from different parts of the Capitol complex and a friend of mine. And the last part of the day is residential life, which can be a little tumultuous too, because you do so many different things when you get home. You have a lot of homework from the classes, because classes are usually shorter than 50 minutes, and they have to get all of that content in that you normally would get in a school day. So usually you'd have anywhere from an hour to 2 hours worth of homework for each class. So you work on that quite a bit. Many nights I found myself staying up past 11 or 12 or maybe even 1 a.m. trying to finish the homework. And in the end, I don't regret it, but there were nights where I was just contemplating my choices. And you also have to perform chores, because 30 of you live in one building, so you get assigned chores, whether that's vacuuming or helping clean the laundry, or cleaning up someone's dishes that they forgot to clean up. So you get a wide variety of experiences there, and you really, your day is very, very structured, as you can see. And there's just a few pictures from my more so residential experience. My roommates and I, as we had to get ready to go in at 2 in the morning for work, studying and carving pumpkins, and then another one is of us when we went out to eat. There are a lot of benefits to the PAGE program. First and foremost, especially if you're someone who's interested in politics, you get to meet a lot of our country's elected leaders. And I think I met almost all of the major figures in our government. I can't think of any other than Supreme Court justices, I think I met almost all of them. And I have a few pictures for that. There's a picture with us and President Biden when we got to meet him in early January. They don't structure us into the part of the President's Day. They do for senators and vice president, but he just got out of a meeting, and he was a senator for a long time, so he knows exactly what pages are, and he was very enthusiastic when he saw us. So that was a very good experience. And then there's another picture I have of us and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, and we had a lot of exposure to him because he was a senator, and we'd set him up and things such as those. Another big benefit is obviously you live in Washington, D.C. for 5 months. So you get to explore. You get to see the monuments. You get to try food we don't have here. You get to understand how to use a Metro card. That took me a while to learn. Yeah, it's just such a good experience, especially for me. I'd never been to Washington, so it was kind of a good first experience. And there's a picture of me and some of my friends. We went to the Hadestown Broadway musical at the Kennedy Center. Another benefit, sometimes I didn't think it was a benefit, but as I look back, was the challenging academics. It is an AP curriculum, and it's very difficult. In order to get to the PAGE program, usually you have to be a straight A student, as one would say, but a lot of people don't leave straight A students. I was fortunate too, but it can be very rigorous and difficult, and you really have to learn how to adapt to the pace. And the other big benefit was, obviously, for me personally, was to make friends from all across the country. I was the only person from the upper Midwest there. My closest people were from Idaho and from over in Illinois. So when I would say something like, "Oops, sorry," or when I'd say, "You betcha," they'd be like, what are you saying? Like, what does that mean? Or hot dish, or when I say supper, there's just so many colloquialisms, they just did not understand. So now when people say it here, I'm just like, what are you talking about? They kind of shamed me out of saying those things. But yeah, I thought I'd provide just a little picture of we got to have like a last night celebration. We had a photo booth, and it was just kind of to depict the fun aspect of the program. So I'd now like to open the floor to questions, if any of you have any.
Thank you, Will. Dr. Luck, you had a few comments.
Just quickly, Will, I just want to express how proud we are of you. This is such a great experience that you had, but as a community, as a school district, we're so proud of you. I don't know the history if there were other Jamestown students that have ever been pages, and I think we're going to get some information on that, but it's not very often. And this is a great honor for you and your family, and a great honor for our district. And like I said, I'm just very proud of you.
And if I could just jump in, just like you were, I think you're about to say, we did have a page 4 years ago. Jessica Schmitz was our last page.
And then prior to that, we had we had Michaela Willer,
Yep.
and then prior to that, we had
one, Senator Jordan sponsored one in 2008, I believe.
was it Callie Muslin?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, sure. So we
Yeah,
have,
so those are the ones that I am familiar with back. But I also want to add is it's not easy to get into it. Your laurels were the thing that got you there. And I have a question. Everyone who came back always said the English teacher was a beast. But about a year later, they said, oh my gosh, I felt like so much more prepared. But that one in particular,
yeah, I can speak to that. There are stories in the Senate, when you first get there, they say, Mrs. Owens, she'll be interesting. But I even though it's only been a month, I already miss her. She knows so much, and I'd say she's one of the most knowledgeable educators I ever
that's
had.
what I,
She was a very good teacher. And we also had a very good math teacher. Her name was Miss Lyons, and she had a very interesting curriculum, but you could really tell that she really cared about us as students, and I really appreciated that.
Jason?
Yes, congratulations on your accomplishment. I'm intrigued about the application process, and I might have missed a part in there. Was there a state level first and then national? Obviously, this was a very rigorous process, and I was glad to hear that you did contemplate your decisions from time to time, but you stuck it out, so that's great. So, what was the state versus national process, compared?
So with the PAGE program, the entire structure of it is that everyone is appointed by a separate senator's office. So every senator's office has a different process. With Senator Hoeven, I had to submit letters of recommendation, my transcript, and then a resume. And then if I cleared that barrier, and I did, obviously. I had an interview, and then they called me a day later, and they said, yeah, we think you'll be our candidate. And that's the way that I would say 95% of pages get in, is through their senators' offices. Rarely, some people are appointed by the secretaries for majority and minority, but for almost all pages, they usually have to go through their senator, because that's who appoints them.
And then real quick, the honors classes, they now appear on your JPS transcript, or you have a separate honors type transcript, or how does that look?
Dale, would you like to help?
when we would get those, we would just add them to your transcript, and it would denote that what they were. So that is, and also I should add, the pages that our school years don't sync. So not only was he finishing up a real hard coursework there, he also had to jump in to be ready to go when he got back here, which is something usually the school counselor would coordinate with. We would always have to give things to that program so they would be ready. So at the end, they're doing literally all of that and another load on top of that, which is outstanding.
Do you have any more to add?
Yeah, I would just say I'm very grateful for Mrs. Skunberg and Mr. Geller. They made the transition very easy. And the staff at the Page School tries to really cater to you going home and jumping right in where you left off. So I felt very prepared for that.
Fantastic. Dan, you have your patient waiting period.
How did you hear about the program in the first place?
It's kind of been a long time plan for me, because in 7th grade, Jessica, she was our last page. Ironically, just down the hall, I sat in the lunchroom next to Stephen Schmitz, and he would tell us about his sister and about what she was doing, and I was just like, well, I got to get in on that eventually. So I contacted her about a year and a half ago, and she was just very helpful in the application process and kind of giving me a scope of what I would be doing.
Yeah, I'm just curious on what your future aspirations are after going through something like this.
I don't know. That's a really good question, because I guess I'm still sorting through that even a month after, because you're like, I just did this really big thing. What do I do to proceed it? But I don't know. I guess graduate high school is my top of my priorities right now.
Jason, you have another?
Well, this will obviously look good on any college application. Tell us your single favorite memory of this experience.
Oh, there's so many good memories. The one unique thing about my time there is we didn't have any tourists in the capital because of the pandemic and because of the events of last year. So on the last day that I was in the Capitol, the last day of work, we all had the opportunity to just go into the rotunda, and we just all laid down on the floor, and we looked up at the apotheosis of Washington. It was just you just felt kind of, just could feel the weight of history on you. It was just very cool. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Will, we're incredibly proud of you, and thank you for representing our school as well in Washington. And we're just glad that it was a lot to take on, this schedule. It's almost unbelievable, and on top of the schoolwork that you did at both locations. And so we're very proud of you, and look forward to seeing where you go next.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move back up to under C, reports, superintendent's report.
Well, thank you. I'm going to have a hard time following Will. You did such a great job. You have my written report, a few updates, summer school, summer programming. You're familiar, you've heard of the MOST program, which is our summer program. That's funded pretty significantly through a 21st Century grant. And unfortunately, we're at the end of that grant, and the grant subsidized costs pretty significantly. And so we're going to end up seeing a shift in costs to that program. We aren't able to subsidize family need to the same degree. And so we're going to have a flat rate for that for the duration of the program, which is just through this year. That program goes from June 1st through July 29th. I will say it's still below, even for full pay, it's below market for programs of this nature, but it'll be a change for those families that have utilized that and have been able to access a smaller scale. It's unfortunate, but it's just part of the timing of this, and the fact that the grant funds and even SEC funds have been utilized to subsidize those costs throughout the course of the school year. And we are very fortunate to have the 21st Century program, very fortunate to have the MOST program, but again, we're at the end of a grant cycle, so that's what we're dealing with, but we will have the program for 130 students. Soon I'll be bringing a summer grant for an aviation camp from Mr. Heinert. He's working through CTE to apply for a summer program for summer aviation. And I've included the summer school salary schedule for you as well for the next couple of years. It's a tiered system that's based on experience and based off the base salary. And it has been that way for a number of years. Teacher Leadership Academy, I wanted to update that I have found a rural partner, Lemoore. So we'll have the Lemoore and Jamestown Teacher Leadership Academy this cycle, so that'll be our cohort 2. We'll have actually 13 now. We've added another local GPS educator, so we have 9, and I believe we're going to have 10. I believe that we're going to have another one that'll apply as well. So 13, 14 participants getting their graduate degree through that Teacher Leadership Academy, which we're very excited about. I wanted to share a little bit about facility projects, summer maintenance updates. You're used to seeing those minutes from the design process. We aren't having those as much anymore. We're to bid walkthrough stages. So we aren't going to be meeting as often, so you won't see as many of those minutes because we aren't in design stages anymore. But we do have, we had one bid walkthrough on February 28th. We have one later this week for the middle school. I have the schedule that's consistent with what you've seen in the past for that schedule, but bids will be coming, and we can expect GMPs next meeting for Gusner, and then a GMP for the middle school on April 4th. The summer maintenance projects are a part of the planning process. We have our capital projects plan, which we have outlined for 10 years worth of needs, as the board is fully aware. But we also have needs that come up every year. And so I'm actually revamping. I took on it's one of those things, it's kind of like Will was saying earlier, you almost wish you wouldn't have started, because as I got into revising this process, it created even more work for myself. But I wanted to revise the summer maintenance requests to better align with the capital projects plan. And so I'm revising that process so soon. Our administrators will have a chance to weigh in on what their needs outside of the capital projects plan are. And if there are projects that aren't in there, how would they get the facility committee to consider funding those, whether it's added onto the capital projects plan in a future year, or it's even done in this summer project list. So that's a process we're in now, but it happens there. Summer project, a summer project list will be prioritized at the building level. So every principal gets a list of what's in the capital projects plan and has a chance to weigh in on any additional projects that they might want to see happen or might see a need from a facility and site perspective. That then comes to the central office. Sally Jerome Wagner, who is the district maintenance director, and I will sit down, and then we'll prioritize again based on available funding. Where are we at? We'll make recommendations to the facility committee. Facility committee will look at all of those needs collectively, make a decision on what's funded or what a recommendation for what it would be funded, and then that comes to the full board for approval. So a lot of steps, a lot of perspectives shared to get to what projects we actually have. We know we have $33 million worth of needs, and we collect a little under $800,000 annually with our building fund. So we have to prioritize. And we have to have a plan, so we're making sure that we're addressing the right plans every year. So that should be coming in the near future. I think I delayed myself a week or so in getting that out just by wanting to improve the process a little bit, but I think overall that's going to be a better process. Esser funding, I wanted to touch base on that just a little bit. We've talked a lot about Esser, and we know that there's some flow through. We're making some claims throughout the year, and we have had a plan on what we're going to claim and how that's going to flow through our general fund and impact different projects like our facility projects. One of the things that Sally and I have been monitoring is, are we going to be claiming enough funds to cover our expenses for our flow-through projects? And what is the timing of our projects to make sure that we're claiming funding at the right times and at the right amount? And we're going to be digging deeper into that, but I just wanted to share with the board that I feel, at least tentatively as we've started this process, that we might have to be claiming different things than what we were going to be claiming, because we want to get as much of that those Esser dollars claimed as soon as possible for two reasons. One, timing of these projects. Second, is Esser regulations change on a regular basis, and we want to make sure that we claim things as quickly as possible. That doesn't change the plans, doesn't change the outcomes of what we're going to be using dollars on. It's just how quickly are we going to claim them. For example, in our initial plans, we were going to claim our 10 counselors. And that was part of what we were going to claim, and then repurpose those dollars to, say, facility projects or other projects. What we could do, and this is what Sally and I need to explore, is could we claim counselors and another category of staff, say elementary teachers, and claim all of those funds in one fiscal year. Then we could devote those dollars exactly as we would have otherwise, but they would just be in our general fund, and then we could distribute. Again, the projects don't change. Nothing about this would change except the timing and what we're requesting dollars for. But that's something that we're not making a recommendation. I'm just giving awareness, and that it's something that I believe is prudent to do. I think getting those Esser dollars in our general fund as soon as possible makes a lot of sense. But again, I keep coming back, the projects wouldn't change. We would continue the same projects that we would have done anyway. It's just what projects are you, or what claims are you making, and when are you making them? So I'm going to pause for questions. Are there questions on that?
Go ahead, Aaron.
So the concern you're raising there is it basically just a cash flow thing on timing of the projects versus the reimbursement?
That is a much simpler way to say what I said in 5 minutes, yes. Thank you. But yeah, that's a real concern, is cash flow, but also the regulations changing. I would like to claim now, or as much as I can now, if regulations change and suddenly we can't claim it for something we wanted to claim a year from now. I would rather get that done now, and that's fairly consistent with what school districts across North Dakota are doing, just to make sure that they're following all the regs, but taking advantage of that flexibility and cash flow.
And then we have two fiscal years in the summer too, which fiscal year as well, right? That's
Correct,
another
yep.
consideration. Okay, Jason, go ahead.
So other than the fact that this is a government program, why are there so many changes or revamps now?
It's a great question. In fairness to the Department of Public Instruction and the Department of Education, the federal government, these rolled out very quickly, and I don't think they had time to vet all the regulations as quick as they would have in a typical rollout. In the scope and the scale of Esser 1, 2, and 3 are unlike anything we've ever seen. And so I think it's understandable that there would be hiccups along the way in changing regulations. I think the department's done the best they can.
Any other questions before we move on?
That.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. We did provide our contracts out for teachers and our non-teaching, what we call our non-teaching professional schedule, and our administrators out the first day that we could, which was March 1st. And those deadlines are due March 15th. We'll do our letters of intent. Those are for our support staff, and we anticipate having those ready by April 1st. And so I think this is as early as we've ever, well, it's as early as we're allowed to, but I don't think we've ever had all of those agreements completed, at least not in the 9 years that I've been here, quite this early. So I feel very prepared for hiring any replacements that we might need. We'll certainly know what we're dealing with in very short order. One of the items that you'll be acting on, or I'm recommending to act upon later, is a request from the Jamestown Middle School to shift some staffing. And I will say that this isn't a new FTE. It's shifting of responsibilities or shifting of coursework, which creates schedule changes. So it's not new FTE, but it is using that time a little bit differently, allowing, for example, the library media specialist to focus more on that particular role rather than teaching a few literacy classes. It would shift Foundations of Technology to 8th grade, and then open a semester-long course in STEM, and then also a semester course in life skills in the 7th grade. So that's how that shift would look, and Mr. Hardy is here as well when it gets to that point in the agenda, and he can answer questions on that as well. But just to reinforce that that isn't an FTE change, it's just shifting of staffing. But because it's a new position, I felt it was important to bring it to the board for approval. I wanted to, I can't find where I put it in. Oh, PE. One of the resignations that's coming is a part-time position for Barb Williams. It's a .56 FTE. She had made a request, a little history here. She had made a request a number of years ago to move from full-time to a part-time, and it was determined .56 was the right FTE to be part-time. We have made that work as a district, but it is not perfect. I'll give you an example of one that's concerned me, has been our single-section elementaries. Just the way the schedule has worked out, Tuesday they have one PE teacher, Thursday they have another PE teacher. They're different teachers. We're putting a lot of teachers on the road, a lot of windshield time. I don't think that's the most effective format for our teachers or for our students, to have two different teachers for a classroom. And that's one solution I would like to, this is very bare bones what we have from the K through 12 on PE. You've seen a lot of extended contracts on the high school, for example, that have had to cover because we start at one level and we share down, then we share down again, and then we share out between elementary schools. And it's very efficient, but I would say it's not as effective as it could be. And so what I would suggest is that, and this will be coming as a recommendation in a future meeting, but I want to lay the foundation for it now. I believe that position does need to be full-time. I think we can not quite make it budget neutral, but be very close to that by absorbing a number of those extended contracts at the high school level. not issuing them because we'll have more time. We would stop the sharing from the high school to the middle school, which would allow the middle school to go to, well, Mr. Smith right now goes to 2 different elementaries. He would maybe be able to go to just one, and this is some the details we're working out. And then somebody else go to Louis L'Amour and cover that full day. I can't cover it all in the 0.44 FTE, but I think we can get close. It's just something that our administrators are studying out right now, and I'll make a recommendation. Just wanted to lay the foundation that I think that's going to be an important change that we'll be recommending later for the teacher, for the students, just for our programs. I love efficiency, but I think this has been a little too bare bones, and I don't think we're making the best choices we could. And so that'll be coming at a future meeting. So I am happy to share, you saw a few months ago an approval, or to approve a grant for our CTE project updates. It required a local match. The district provided $500,000. The JSDC provided an additional support in a match. I'm happy to say that we were partially funded. Only a handful of schools were fully funded. Their focus was on the full program requests, the largest request, the 10 million, which was the cap, and we were much smaller than that. But I will say that they were very pleased. The feedback I got from the committee that made the selection was they were very happy with with the work that was done with the application, but also the commitment from our community, the JSDC and the school district, and they were pleased with that. And they wanted to fund us to the degree that they could, and that ended up being $543,963. It does leave us about $250,000 short of what we originally requested, which is unfortunate, but there were a lot of programs that got zero. We were the only program that was partially funded. Every other program was fully funded, and they were large dollar amounts, 10 million, 8 million. I think there was one that was 5 or 6 million. And so we certainly wished we had been fully funded. Mr. Heinert and Mr. Gaylor are already working to see if there is a way to raise that additional $253,000 so we can continue the project on as we originally had planned, or we'll have to look at what aspects of that grant proposal could be cut, which we hope isn't the case, but it's a reality that it may be. So that the dollar amount is going to be finite, so we have to figure out how to make that work, whether that is increased revenue or cutting expenditures. So later on in this agenda, you'll have Trapper Field lights will come on. I referenced in my report that Amy Walters and I were having a meeting last week, which we did. Amy is here to talk. You had Joan Morris here earlier and made a request for $15,000. The board had decided at that time to kind of bookmark that conversation until more funds could be committed. And we are to that point where funds have been committed, and the board and the district needs to decide if that's a support that we have and can provide or not. My perspective, as I shared this summer when we brought this up originally, is it's consistent with what we've done with other projects. The dugout project for Jack Brown Stadium, for example, sharing in the project with UJ. I think we have great relationships with different partners in our community. And just like Amy has replaced 2 individuals at the Parks and Rec that had a lot of institutional and historical knowledge in Parks and Rec in Jamestown, and that's very valuable. The valuable thing about having a new person come in is you see different things. You see something that maybe hasn't been seen or hasn't been considered in the same way. And so we've had conversations already about what that partnership looks like, what it could look like, what it should look like moving forward between JPS and Parks and Rec. And we'll continue to have those conversations. But in terms of this, the request is $15,000 from both the University of Jamestown and JPS to fund lights at Trapper Field. And really, in terms of lights at Trapper Field, that is almost completely high school benefiting. not a lot of programs through the Parks and Rec, or maybe any, utilize lights in that space. That is something that the University of Jamestown and the Jamestown High School programs would see the largest or perhaps all the benefit from. So asking for that $15,000 to support seems like a reasonable request from my perspective, and something that is consistent with what we've done in the past. So with that, I will stand for questions.
Any questions from the board about the report? Thank you, Dr. Leck. Moving on, E, so we've already had our board education, so we're moving down to E, old business. There is none. F, new business. We have nothing under activities. Under buildings and grounds, the Trapper Field lights. Amy, could you come forward and just provide a little more information, and if the board has questions? Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Is this on?
We're getting feedback, so you just have to use your teacher voice.
Okay, good. Thanks for having me tonight. I feel like I used to be here all the time, and then I transitioned roles, and so the group looks different. But I thank you for taking time tonight to hear the request. And Rob did a great job of kind of laying the foundation for one, just the conversation that we had in regards to the relationship of Jamestown Public Schools and Jamestown Parks and Recreation. I think a long-standing relationship of successfully operating programs, sharing facilities, all of those types of things, and I really look forward to continuing that. I don't know if it's one of the great things of being new in a role, but it is one of the things about being new in a role is, I'm asking a lot of questions, and so that's where Rob and I started earlier this week, and I really value that relationship, and I think we'll continue to do things, and already had some initial brainstorming meetings with elementary representatives regarding athletics and just some of those things that we can do together and maybe look at addressing in different ways. So as it relates to the Trapper Field project, Jamestown Parks and Recreation, and again, this is one that I was handed off, so I'm recollecting activities that I maybe not in the role I am now. So request came to Jamestown Parks and Recreation to install lighting at Trapper Field. So Trapper Field is the fast pitch softball diamond that is used by Jamestown Public Schools, girls softball program, University of Jamestown women's softball, and then the Jamestown Outlaws fast pitch program. We do also use that facility for our adult slow pitch women's softball as well in the summer months. So as far as lights go, as Rob stated, Jamestown Parks and Recreation for our programs doesn't really have any need for lights. We run our programs in the time of year when the sun is shining for a long part of the day. However, Jamestown Public Schools, University of Jamestown, as they're playing their games earlier in the spring, that sun just isn't quite up as long. So the request came into us, and we did submit and successfully receive a grant to cover 50% of those costs. Total project cost is $297,573 to install lights and make some minor adjustments to fencing due to the fact that we have to install light poles. So not real significant changes to fencing, just mostly the cost of the light themselves, and then some work with Otter Tail to update and move transformers, those types of things. So as I said, 50% of the project is covered through a North Dakota Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, and now we're going back out to partners to see where they're at with commitment to the project. Any questions from the board?
You're saying that Jamestown Public Schools, University of Jamestown's are really the only ones who use the lights. So would that?
At this point, there are no lights.
Right, but when they would be, if they were to be installed. So who would be responsible then for paying the utilities on those lights, and would rental be charged
for fields in the future?
So that is part of the conversation that Rob and I started. At this point, we do not have any user groups that pay for rental usage of our outdoor fields or court spaces, which is a challenge for our organization. Because we're essentially absorbing all of those operating and maintenance costs. So with this project, currently, yes, the electrical, all of that would become a Jamestown Parks and Recreation operation cost.
Any other questions? So Amy, so the total cost is
$575.30.
And then 30 cents, yes. So 15 from, is the request
Correct.
from Jamestown Public Schools?
That's, as I understood it previously, that's the
Yes.
request that came to this board.
Yep, I believe that was correct. I remember that. And so you have 50% covered by the grant. The
Correct.
remainder is that Park and Rec?
At this point, Parks and Recreation will not put any additional funds besides the grant funds and the operational costs moving forward. So if the funds are not secured by outside sources or fundraising, the project will not move forward. Again, that's at this point. That could change with, our board may, but currently we do not have anything budgeted for that.
Is there someone more that would be interested in making a motion for this?
Madam President, I would move that, if they can secure the funds up to the 15,000, if they're just short that 15,000 that we're thinking we're gonna give, or that we wanna give, if you can get to that point, I would make a motion that we go ahead and do that.
Is there a second? Yeah. Any discussion? Jason?
So can someone remind me what our rationale was for tabling this prior?
Jason, my recollection at the time is they didn't know where the rest of the funding was coming from. The grant wasn't in place.
Okay.
And so I think we kind of talked about, come back when you get more funding, come back and talk to us.
That makes
about
sense.
that at that time.
Thank you.
So that's my recollection of this. The rest of the board remember anything different. Aaron?
So is this something that will come out of the building fund budget?
It certainly could. I think the board could do a couple that you could make a commitment from the general fund. And then defer to Sally on what she thinks would be best. But what I think would be best is we put it on the summer projects and fund it out of the building fund for the $15,000 commitment.
Aaron?
Yeah, I guess that, just, there's a lot of activity going on with that building fund. We're looking at the high school, and that's running a little hot. We're gonna get bids coming in on the middle school and Gusner coming in here, and kind of expecting that's gonna be a little hot as well. There's a lot of things we're deferring, specifically with the roofs and replacement of that, which is an issue, I think, that we need to be aware of. So I'm not really in favor at this point of stacking something on top, because I know stuff is already coming off, and this just makes that problem worse.
Sally and I were just having a side conversation about the North Dakota Century Code on the dispensation of the building fund. I think it would likely be best to be a general fund expenditure, so we'd have to build it into our general fund budget for next year. I'm not sure it would qualify under Century Code for dispensation of the building fund because it's not our property, but it would have to be built into our general fund.
And we approve it, and we can look into that more to see what's best to get out of. So, but right now we're looking at approving. There's been a motion, a second to approve. Roger?
Just one question for Amy. The outlook of how soon, is there a good outlook that you're going to be getting the extra funding this year, or will it be next year? Or?
I guess I don't know that I can answer that. I'm at the point now where I'm going back to those partners that kind of originally approached us about this is a need at this facility. So University of Jamestown has stood by their commitment to the $15,000 from the original conversation, and I'm here tonight.
Okay.
Jason?
Can you quickly just remind us, or someone from the board, all the activities that would occur there that affect our students? Girls softball, and I might have missed another one. Is that it?
Fast pitch softball.
Fast pitch
Fast
softball.
pitch softball. Okay.
Track
Thank you.
fields and basketball, softball.
Okay. Thank you.
We're talking about it.
Yeah, and so we have high school, and in the future.
There's been discussion of a junior high program or a middle school program as well. We think about games and how late games go, but lights on fields, practice fields, and also allow us to practice longer, which allow us to schedule things at different times that we wouldn't have an advantage to do. And this is a spring activity, so our daylight hours are less, and so it does provide some limits for us as well.
Melissa?
The funding that was, the grant proposal, was that specifically for track or field, or if all the funding, are you able to use that in a different area, or it is specifically for that?
Correct.
And then it just disappears?
Yes, we would be turning back the funds. It is specific to that project, and the way these dollars are designated is they're federal dollars that come to our state. They can only be used on areas of land that are designated for recreation purposes into perpetuity. So it's not like we can say, oh, we're gonna, do something on a different softball field. It's specific
Use it
to
in
this
this-
project at that space for this budget.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Aaron?
So if it's coming out of the general fund, just to kind of remind everybody, we already approved a $100,000 deficit. And so we're already in deficit spending. So this would just add on top of that unless we can find something that can come out.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. We have a motion to approve $15,000 for the lights at Trafford Field. And we have a second. And we've had discussion. Sally, could we do a roll call, please?
Melissa Gleason,
Yes.
Roger Howe,
Yes.
Heidi Larson.
Yes.
Jason Laura,
Yes.
Gail Nelson.
Yes.
Dan Tweeten,
No.
Aaron Roberts.
No.
Motion passes 5-2.
Thank you, Sally. Moving on, finance. There's something under finance. 5, personnel. 5A is approval of resignation of Jana Kohler, business and marketing teacher at the high school at the conclusion of the 2021 to 2022 school year. Could I have a motion to approve? Roger approved. Gail second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Did you have a discussion, Dan? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. B, approval of resignation of Barb Williams, physical education teacher in the elementary at the conclusion of the 2021 to 2022 school year. Can I have a motion to approve? Aaron approved?
Second.
Seconded by Jason. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Approval of resignation, under C, approval of resignation of Delynn Mitleider, special education teacher at the high school at the conclusion of the 2021 to 2022 school year. Is there a motion? Roger moved. Second by Melissa. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. And we thank all those teachers for their service to our district. Some have been here for a little longer than others, for sure. So thank you. Under D, approval of letters of resignation for the 2021 to 2022 extended contracts for Pam Schmiedeberg, Cheryl Sunderland, Bill Nelson, Shelley Moldson, Sydney Brummeyer, Kimberly Carpenter, Jason Carroll, Heidi Eckert, Delynn Mitleider, Andrew Fitzgerald, Ken Gardner, Tom Mouse, Anthony McIntyre, Lee Meyer, Nicole Nelson, Denise Walton, Denise Woods, Chantel Har, and Michael Dietz. Can I have a motion to approve? Gail, second by Roger. Any discussion? Yes. Aaron?
When is the conclusion of the resignation there? Is it at the end of the year, or is it?
end of the semester. What we've decided to do moving forward with all of our extended contracts is to do them by semester. So some of these are the second semester, some of them are full years, but they would all be done at the end of the second semester. And moving forward, you could expect only semester extended contracts. So you would do these twice a year instead of once.
Thank you. And then just for the public, I want to remind the public that this is just extra courses, extra classes. We appreciate them, these teachers taking on, and so they aren't, it's not a resignation of their regular contract, just their extended classes that they're taking. So any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. E, approval to post 7th grade life skills position. Okay, motion by Roger, second by Aaron. Any discussion? And Mr. Hardy is here to answer questions, right? If we have, Gail?
What kind of degree are we looking for this person, or what kind of person would be applying? Would it, some of those can be handled by elementary ed degrees, or what would we be looking for?
It's really pretty open, but Mr. Hardy?
Thank you, Mr. Hardy.
Yeah, actually, you have a teaching degree, you can teach it, so it really opens up the candidate pool. And as you know, in the type of situation we are right now, finding quality candidates for many classes, this really opens it up to quality teacher is what we're going to look for.
I just had one comment too. One
of the things that came up, and I referenced it in my report, is library media and the paradigm shift that's occurring. Sometimes when we think of school librarian, we have a certain picture in our mind, and a library media specialist is very much different than that. And this shift is going to allow a library media specialist to act as a library media specialist. And one of the things that I've asked, and Mrs. Gall, who is a middle school library media specialist, has requested as well to come in and share on board education. So I'm going to schedule her in either sometime in some open time that we have the rest of this year, or put her on our schedule for next year so we can come in and talk about what the changing paradigm of library media specialists are. So I just wanted to touch base on that because that's something that will be coming to.
Jason.
So the attachment to this agenda item led us to the proposal from Mr. Hardy about, I got confused when I was reading it. That's the correct attachment, because I didn't see anything in there about an 8th grade life skills teacher unless I missed it.
It's shifting around. Anytime it's a shifting position, it's a shifting FTE, and anytime that there's a request to shift programs or to add teachers or change FTE teachers, I ask the principals to make a proposal so I can, before I were to bring it to the board, I could have a full understanding of what they're requesting. And I do believe it references in there that shifting foundations of technology to 8th grade, which would open up the semester of STEM and life skills into the 7th grade. And so I attach that because that's the rationale that the principals give to me to see if it moves forward.
Go ahead, Jason.
And so we are anticipating this to be a budget neutral or minimally impactful shift.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And there is a resignation that just came in today. It didn't make its way onto this agenda. It'll be on the 21st. That might shift that a little bit too, and actually even make some of what we've outlined even easier to implement with a different change. But that isn't for this meeting yet because it just came this afternoon.
All right. Any other questions or discussion or questions for Mr. Hardy? Okay. So we've had a motion and a second to approve post the 7th grade life skills position. And there be no further discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion approved. Okay, moving on to F, Superintendent Evaluation. We have 6 areas to approve. Goal and vision setting, board relations, human resource management, curriculum and student support services, community relations, operations, and resource management. So what we'll do is we'll go through each of the 6 sections, and we will vote on each of the 6 sections. And then we'll do a roll call for these, right, Sally?
Madam President, I would
Yes.
move that under Section 1, Goals and Vision Setting, we have a rank of satisfactory.
Is there a second? Dan, a second. Any discussion? Do the roll call, Sally.
Melissa Gleason?
I'm sorry, what we?
We're doing a roll call vote on
For satisfaction.
satisfactory.
Yes.
And I said yes, and then you looked at me like.
Oh, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry. Oh, Roger Hout.
Yes.
Heidi Larson.
Yes.
Jason Rohr.
Yes.
Gail Nelson. Dan Tweeten.
Yes.
Aaron Roberts. Motion passes.
Thank you, Sally. Number 2, board relations. Roger?
I would move that in section 2, board relations, we, with a ranking of satisfactory.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Aaron? So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. Sally, go ahead with the roll.
Get to be first again, Melissa, sorry. Melissa Gleason.
Yes.
Roger Hout.
Yes.
Heidi Larson.
Yes.
Jason Rohr.
Yes.
Gail Nelson. Dan Tweeten.
Yes.
Aaron Roberts.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. The third area is human resource management. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I would move on section 3, human resource management, a satisfactory rating.
We have a motion for a satisfactory rating. Is there a second? Gail? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? There be no discussion. Sally?
Roger Hout.
Yes.
Heidi Larson.
Yes.
Jason Rohr.
Yes.
Gail Nelson.
Yes.
Dan Tweeten.
Yes.
Aaron Roberts.
Yes.
And Melissa Gleason. Motion passes 7-0.
Area 4, curriculum and student support services. Is there a motion? You want to? And
Section 4, satisfactory rating.
there's a motion for a satisfactory rating for section 4. Is there a second?
Second.
Aaron, second. Any discussion? There being no discussion, Sally, do a roll, please.
Roger Hout.
Yes.
Heidi Larson.
Yes.
Jason Rohr.
Yes.
Gail Nelson.
Yes.
Dan Tweeten.
Yes.
Aaron Roberts.
Yes.
Melissa Gleason. Motion passes 7-0.
Section 5, community relations. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I'd move there was satisfactory rating on section 5, community relations.
We have a motion for a satisfactory rating for community relations. Is there a second? Gail? Any discussion? There being no discussion, Sally, roll, please.
Heidi Larson.
Yes.
Jason Rohr.
Yes.
Gail Nelson.
Yes.
Dan Tweeten.
Yes.
Aaron Roberts.
Yes.
Melissa Gleason. And Roger Hout.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, Sally. Number 6, that's the last section, operations and resource management. Is there a motion?
Madam President, I'd move on section 6, satisfactory rating on resource management and.
Operations. We have a motion of satisfactory for operations and resource management. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Aaron. Any discussion? There being no discussion, Sally, the roll, please.
Jason Rohr.
Yes.
Gail Nelson.
Yes.
Dan Tweeten.
Yes.
Aaron Roberts.
Yes.
Melissa Gleason.
Yes.
Roger Hout.
Yes.
And Heidi Larson.
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And so thank you. I did meet with Dr. Leck, and we did have, we reviewed all the 6 areas, and as well as the comments that, and there was kind of 4 areas that we talked about. One is the strategic plan, which is in progress. We're waiting for some executive board information. We have a board committee, that's a strategic planning committee. Information will get to those. So looking to start the new fiscal year with that plan, which starts July 1st. We talked about communication with 9 buildings and lots of staff that, although rated high in communication, I always feel like we can always continue to work on communication, and so keep up that work and just continue to do that. A couple other areas, there was some questions about professional development, and that is actually has already been scheduled for a board PD, and so some of those questions can be asked and answered also at that time. There were several recommendations for a PD that we can and suggestions, so we can look at that time. And just a couple things that kind of related to some of our choice ready, and I think that I suggested to Dr. Leck that we heard about that initially when it was started, but we really haven't gotten an update, and so probably some updates on that would also be helpful for us. So appreciate the conversation with Dr. Leck, and he's made the comment that he's always looking for feedback that can help him be a better superintendent, so I appreciate that. Yes, Jason?
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate that synopsis of our comments. I don't think we've ever done that before, so I really do appreciate that. We know that's been discussed and we're looking to improve. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Yep, we had a good conversation, so thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Thank you, and we appreciate you, Dr. Luck, and being our superintendent for our district. And for the public's information, by Century Code, we do evaluations actually twice a year on our superintendent. So thank you. Okay, moving on. Policies and procedures. A, approval of amended student assemblies policy FFG. Is there a motion to approve? Gail, motion to approve. Second? Second by Roger. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Under B, approval of amended patron complaint policy KACA. Is there a motion to approve? There's one word difference on that one, yep. Motion by Roger, second by Gail. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Number 7, tuition, nothing under that. 8, under other. And 8A is the election timeline. Sally, there's information on our website. You can come to the central office. You can go, any more to add? April 1st is the deadline, is that correct? April 4th. Okay, 4th. April 4th is the deadline. Okay. Thank you. Items for future agenda. Is there any items for future agenda? Aaron.
Yeah, just recognizing that we're going to be reinstating the fees for the school lunch program here next year. Recognizing that it's been a couple years since we've done that, and I suggest we take a proactive approach to that, and maybe even possibly set up an ad hoc committee to address a communication plan, review the policy, look at the budget side of it, and then pose a recommendation to the board in the case that we want to do something proactively as we reinstate that. So just for the future agenda item.
Yeah. Great idea, Aaron. Gail.
And I have one more. I know a question has come through to us about maybe just address how we do fund playground equipment and what is the process at the different schools, how is that updated? Just an informational, okay. So that all PTOs understand and how that process works.
Yep.
Who makes what decisions in that?
It's part of our capital projects plan, but we can
just address it.
That again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Anything else for items for future agenda? If you think of anything after the meeting, you can let myself, Rob, or Sally know. Meetings to be scheduled. We have a Dollars for Scholars meeting on Monday, March 14th at noon in the multipurpose room. There's a health insurance meeting on Monday, March 14th at 3:45 in the multipurpose room. That room's getting used. Regular school board meeting. So come here on Monday, March 21st, 2022 at 5:15 p.m. in the Thompson Community Room at the middle school. And your monthly superintendent evaluation, this is Section 2, Board Relations, and Section 3, Human Resource Management. And there be no further business before the board. This meeting's adjourned.